I sincerely believe the BYU football program is going to be just fine despite losing Keelan, Marion, and Harrison Taggart. But there's one key thing the program needs to do to ensure that this is just a one-off and not a bigger problem.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. As always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right, coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about the aftermath of Harrison Taggart and Keelan Marion exiting the program and what BYU needs to do to avoid exacerbating the situation. Then we'll talk about a new commit, the sixth commit of the 2026 recruiting cycle for the BYU football program. Will Legend Glasgow be, wait for it, legendary at BYU? We'll dig into that, and then we'll finish up today's show with BYU continuing to do work, obviously in the recruiting ranks, and a big weekend for a bunch of BYU athletes that we need to delve into as well. All right. So at the outset of this conversation, let me reiterate something I said on yesterday's podcast. For those of you who listened to yesterday's show, if you did not, feel free to stop, rewind, go back to yesterday's show and catch up there. I talked mainly about the losses of Keelan Marion and Harrison Taggart and how I believe that the BYU football program is able to both absorb and actually move on from both of them without missing so much as a beat. Now, when I say that, it's not the BYU is saying, thanks, but no thanks, get out of here. That's not the way the BYU operates. The bigger point I want to make, and something that was reiterated to me yesterday in talking with some people connected to the football program, is that there is what they said, quote, no panic in the football offices, the football building. And I believe that. Here's the deal. BYU understands that this is more of a business than it ever has been before. Guys are signing legitimate contracts with BYU via their NIL, obviously, and the upcoming revenue share that is coming into effect. They will sign contracts that include NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, that will pay them a certain amount of money for multiple pots of said money. They obviously are going to be making money, but BYU, as I said yesterday, is not going to break the bank that may be costing them at another position just to make sure that one player here or there is being paid above what they consider to be market rate for those players. So that is why what I heard yesterday, there is no panic down here, speaking of Provo, is legitimate. The BYU football program understands what Keelan Marion is and what he could offer to the BYU football program. They know what Harrison Taggart is. They know what he could do in Jay Hill's defense. They've got proven track records during their time at BYU. But if they are being offered, in the case of Keelan Marion, reportedly above market rate with regards to NIL, BYU may have to take money to pay that would pay another player in a more critical position of need if they wanted to keep him in the wide receiver core. The other side of that is if they kowtow to a guy like Keelan Marion, I'm not saying that would be kowtowing or he's trying to shake them down for any, I'm not just saying if BYU were, in this case, to set a precedent very early on, even before the true implementation of this revenue share agreement, the new era of college football that's coming into effect, that sets a pretty poor precedent that other players would look at and say, all right, if he can essentially hold out and get more money, why can't I do that? That is where I think BYU needs to focus the most right now, is make sure that the players inside the program, A, know they are loved, B, understand the parameters of why BYU did what they did with regards to Harrison Taggart and or Keelan Marion, but then C, also reiterate to these players that you guys are here in an ultra successful football program. We had a breakthrough campaign last year, and we don't want to screw it up. BYU can't allow the little leak, it might be a small crack in that pipe. You can't let it absolutely shatter and become a gushing mess. You can't have en masse transfers, and you need to avoid that. And that's why I think BYU is okay seeing Keelan Marion and Harrison Taggart hit the road, even as much as it might hurt them to see them leave, because obviously they were key parts of BYU's breakthrough a season ago. But the hope is the talent inside the programs, particularly at the wide receiver position, the return position in special teams with regards to a guy like Parker Kingston, and then obviously on defense with a well-stocked linebacking core, BYU should, and I believe absolutely will, fill those roles with what I consider to be as, if not more talented players who will obviously be looking to take those extra reps that are now afforded to them with those two departures. So to reiterate, I don't think BYU's in a bad spot. I also don't think BYU did anything unseemly. I don't think they did anything that was out of the norm. And we're seeing more and more. You have to just look at Nico Iamaleava, I've got to pronounce that right, transferring from Tennessee, where he was reportedly going to make somewhere between $2.2 and $2.4 million, which is considered to be kind of the market rate in SEC for a quarterback. But now he's going to be taking significantly less after he called Tennessee's bluff and essentially held out for $4 million. There was some people who tell you that he was just trying to get his contract right. No, he held out for more money, thinking that he could hold Tennessee hostage and they would kowtow to his demands. To Tennessee's everlasting credit, they said, son, this is the contract we have. This is what we're going to pay you. And if you don't want to do that, find another program. He's now going to UCLA, and crazily enough, I think it's Joey Aguilar, who was considered to be UCLA's starting quarterback there this year before Nico enrolled at UCLA. They have made a trade now. Aguilar is going to be going to Tennessee to play in the spot that Nico Iamaleava would have been occupying for the Volunteers, while Iamaleava is headed to Westwood to suit up for the Bruins. Kind of a crazy circumstance, but I do appreciate the fact that programs are not going to be held hostage by these players and understand that, hey, you may want more money, and as you absolutely should, but we're not paying it. This is what we signed you for. This is what we're sticking to, because we're not going to break the bank for one player. Because once again, whether it's BYU, whether it's Tennessee, or one of the 130 plus other FBS programs out there, if you set a precedent right now that you will go above and beyond to essentially take care of one player who may not be a top tier. If it was a guy who was a true difference maker, like I say, a Heisman Trophy type player, or for BYU, a Kyle Van Noy type defender, yeah, you would do whatever it takes to take care of those players. But no offense, Harrison Taggart ain't that for BYU's defense. Neither is Keelan Marion for BYU on offense. You can replace those guys, and it sets a precedent that the program is bigger than any one player. And I know in this era of college football, it's a give and take, and there's money flowing back and forth, and players more than ever are more empowered to do as they see fit. But I also understand on the other side of it that these colleges, these universities, they have to look at this as a business, and you're not going to be able to pay everybody what they want. And you have to essentially hold your ground in tough circumstances and say, we've got enough talent to fill that role, even without that guy, and you wish them well and say, hey, hope you'll get your money, but we're not going to be able to pay that for you here. We'd love to have you in the program, but we understand on the flip side that you're looking at other opportunities. In the case of a guy like Harrison Taggart, sure feels like he was probably going to be playing second fiddle at some point this season to a guy like Siale Acera, and he wants to be a starting linebacker at the Power 4 level. Best of luck to him, and I hope he finds and lands on his feet somewhere in college football. But I respect the way the BYU is operating, and I think it's kind of a move back from the brink when it came to player rights and the players always winning out in college sports. Programs are now pushing back not so little, but just a little bit. I think it's going to strike, hopefully a better balance across college football. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about a new commitment for the BYU football program. I'm a big fan of the show How I Met Your Mother. Will legend be, wait for it, legendary? Stay tuned and find out. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys to get you out to the events you want to go to. But more importantly, there's no atmosphere better than an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels absolutely huge. It's electric in the arena. With Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of it having your last-minute ticket hunting go awry. Obviously, Game Time makes it fast and easy to go get your playoff tickets. Even demand is sky high. Tickets on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, with their last-minute deals can fetch you up to 60% off. your ticket price. The best part is you can use the all-in pricing feature in their app. It means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see when you first open the app is what you pay. There's nothing being tacked on at the end. All of a sudden, you're like, hey, where'd all this money come from? Take a guess where you're buying your tickets right now and do it with our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets of lowest price, and of course, it's all guaranteed. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday whenever you hear and or watch this. All right, BYU got a big commitment late on Easter evening. Actually, it was like late into the night of Easter night. Legend Glasgow of Lehigh High School has committed to the BYU football program. He made that official on social media, and congratulations to him. Now, the last name sounds familiar. Let's get this out of the way right up front. Last name Glasgow, you're hey, is he related to Isaiah? Yes, he is in fact Isaiah Glasgow's cousin. They grew up close to one another. There's a picture of them actually when Isaiah was playing youth football and Legend just starting out in his football playing days as like a peewee football player. And both of them have blossomed into absolutely stellar football players. Isaiah, he looks like the next great BYU linebacker. He is absolutely stellar. Well, Legend, he's got a big namesake to live up to because when you're named Legend, well, people are going to expect some legendary things from you. And that's the one thing about this is everything I hear / what I have seen, both with my own eyes and also watching it on film, Legend Glasgow has everything capable, or at least everything I think he needs to be a legend at BYU. Now, time will tell if that truly comes to pass and he lives up to the billing because there's going to potentially be a mission in the mix there. But the other part of it is Legend was a guy last year who, despite playing in just 7 games, and he was one of the guys out there. Some of you out there think that transfer rules don't apply. Well, in Utah high school football, there are still cases where guys are forced to sit out. And that happened to Legend Glasgow last year after he transferred to Lehigh High School to play for the Pioneers. He was not able to suit up until the end of September last season. But in just 7 games, he had over 800 yards. And more importantly, if you look at his stats, kind of a slow start in his first game against Skyridge, 6 receptions, 67 yards. Then he follows it up in a game against Westlake, a blowout, 3 receptions for 73 yards. But then October 10th, against one of the best defenses in Utah high school football, the Lone Peak Knights, in a 24-21 loss, this was his stat line. 9 receptions, 226 yards, long of 53 yards in the game, averaged 25.1 yards per reception, and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely made an imprint, even in a loss, that said, hey, who is this kid? What do I need to know about him? And that's when we really kind of burst onto the scene. He followed up a couple of weeks later with a huge performance, 3 receptions, 175 yards, and 1 touchdown against Layton, and then finished the season in mid-November in the state championship game, a tough loss against Corner Canyon. It was in the state semifinals. Yeah, state semifinals. They lose 35-34. Extra points and kicking was an issue for Lehigh in this game, but Legend did his part in this game. 10 receptions, 129 yards, and 4 touchdowns. His season totals last year, 37 receptions, 781 yards, average of 21.1 yards per reception, a long of 81 in terms of his long reception of the year, and 11 touchdowns. That's in 7 games. What could he do over 10 regular season games and potentially as many as 4 playoff games this year as a senior for Lehigh High School? There's a reason why BYU is on him early on. Fesi Sitake, Aaron Roderick, the BYU Brain Trust, Kalani Sitake, obviously, were in on this kid early, and it paid off with him committing to BYU. He will join his teammate, PJ Taki, who, crazily enough, is the nephew of former BYU linebacker, Sione Taki. You noticing a trend here? Family connections obviously help, but Legend has got everything I think he needs to be a standout football player for BYU. Already 6'2", 175, 180 pounds, depending on where you look. I would imagine he'll be hitting the weight room a lot this offseason. Probably already has done that. And I figure he'll probably measuring maybe closer to 190 this year. He's not necessarily a top-end burner, but you watch his route ability, his just ability to run all of the routes required of him, because I can tell you what I know of Lehigh's offense. Ed Larson, the former head coach, installed an offense that it's not just one read offense. He requires his quarterbacks, his wide receivers, his tight ends, they all need to understand the entire route tree and be able to run said route tree if they want to play in this offense. Now, with Ed stepping aside, we'll see what tweaks are made to the Lehigh football program, but there's a lot of continuity with the coaching staff staying on despite his retirement. I expect that Legend Glasgow is going to have an absolutely stellar senior season. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes over 1,000 yards, maybe challenges for 20 touchdowns. BYU's had a good track record of late, bringing in top-tier high school football talent, particularly at wide receiver, and turning them into pretty good football players. Anybody want to talk about Puka Nacua? Puka is the single best high school football player I have ever seen with my own eyes, and that includes Britton Covey. I would say that Britton Covey is the 1B to Puka's 1A, and obviously Britton played at Utah. But guys like Legend Glasgow, you want those guys in your program. BYU right now has Parker Kingston, who I think is poised to have a breakout year this year as a slot receiver for BYU. With Keelan Marion moving on, I expect that Parker's going to have a big-time imprint in terms of returning and at slot receiver. Cody Hagan, a top-tier talent, one of the fastest wide receivers to ever come out of the Utah high school ranks. Dominic McKenzie from Southern Utah. BYU has done an incredible job with Fesi Sitake leading the way in recruiting this top-tier talent at wide receiver. And so far, the track record suggests they're going to come in and contribute at a high level. Now, we'll see what Cody Hagan and Dom McKenzie can do this year for BYU. I forgot to mention Tei Nakua. They have brought in a lot of talent from the Utah high school ranks at receiver. And the nice part is all of it has bona fide credentials in terms of their production at the high school level, track times, skill set. In the case of Legend Glasgow, he's got already a nice frame at 6'2". You can't teach height. I say it all the time in basketball and in football, that range. The other thing I love about what I've seen from Legend Glasgow, he's got an incredible catch radius. You can throw that ball anywhere within a seemingly 10-foot window around him. He's going to go get that football. And that's a key part. Not all of the footballs out there in the world are going to ever be that accurate and put right on you. Every so often they will be, but you have to bail your quarterback out. Even if they may miss you by a yard or two, bail them out, bring in that tough catch, and move the chains. And that's what I see from a guy like Legend Glasgow. And I'm looking forward to seeing him playing in a BYU uniform, whether it's a year from now, 3 years from now. I don't care when it is. The track record suggests he's poised to have a major senior season this year in the Utah high school football ranks. If you're anywhere in the Utah Valley area, get out and watch Lehigh High School. The region they play in is considered to be the SEC of Utah high school football. It's the best football top to bottom in that league. And Lehigh is going to be right there in the mix all season long. And I, for one, plan to stop by and watch the Pioneers and obviously watch PJ Taki along with his new BYU teammate commit in Legend Glasgow. And once again, I'll reiterate that if you want to live with the Barney Fife quote from How I Met Your Mother, will legend wait for it be legendary? I sure hope so. And I will be tracking, obviously, his stats this coming season for the Lehigh Pioneers and obviously updating you guys here on Locked On Cougars as we talk all things BYU every single day. All right, coming up next, we'll finish up today's show. A couple more notes on the recruiting front. BYU's in hot pursuit of a tight end with a familiar last name. And with Keelan Marion's departure, apparently BYU's not going to sit back and obviously wait for guys to develop in terms of guys that they want to bring into the program. They've offered a guy who's already committed elsewhere to another program. What does that mean for Fesi Sitake and company? We'll finish up on that note next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Now, PrizePicks is here for you guys to have fun in the daily fantasy space. The best part is baseball season is in full swing. There's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you put more or less on at least two players' projections, and if you're right, you went to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs, home runs, or anything else, PrizePicks keeps every game exciting. The best part is you can set a lineup in less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. And the best part is you take advantage of Taco Tuesday, where PrizePicks offers discounts on select player projections, giving you even more value and a bigger opportunity to win. So download the app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup with our friends at PrizePicks. That's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, where you can run your game. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, why are you waiting? And why have you not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group? If I do ask rhetorically, it's the best way to get the inside intel I have on all things BYU coming to your phone in the form of a text message. You don't have to go to a message board. You don't have to log onto a website to get the inside intel you crave. It comes to your phone directly to you. You can fire back with questions of your own. We have conversations via text. It's a great way to get interaction with the show and obviously support the show. And the kicker is, you get a 2-week trial, 14 days free before you charge a single penny, and it's just $5 a month afterwards to be a part of the group. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Link is in the show notes below. Watch whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, or just reach out to me and we'll get you squared away. All right, before we go on today's show, BYU has offered two players in particular I want to hit before we go. First one is a transfer portal tight end with a very, very familiar last name. That is of Keelan Need. Now, Need, what is that? Oh, Spencer Need. Yes. Obviously, one of the great tight ends that doesn't get talked about enough. Spencer was an absolutely electric player for BYU back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Oh, man, I'm misplacing. No, Spencer was in the 2000s. But regardless, really, really phenomenal player. Now, Keelan Need is a guy who originally committed to Jay Hill when Jay Hill was at Weber State, served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, came home, spent a couple of seasons playing for the Weber State Wildcats, and then decided this past winter to transfer, ended up at New Mexico with Bronco Mendenhall, I believe is who he committed to. Then Bronco Mendenhall obviously about face and returned right back to the state of Utah to coach Utah State. Well, that left Keelan Need in a bit of a quandary. Well, he spent this past spring practicing with New Mexico and reportedly was the number one tight end for the New Mexico Lobos under new head coach Jason Eck. Well, just about a week ago, he entered the NCAA transfer portal. Coach Eck said, I wish him well, and went to visit Kentucky earlier on this, I think over the weekend, got an offer from the Wildcats, and we just learned last night that he's an offer from BYU. Now, he's a legacy player. His dad actually played at Idaho, so his dad didn't play for BYU, but his uncle, speaking of Spencer, was one of the more talented wide receiver type tight ends that I loved watching growing up, watching BYU football. Now, Keelan may not have the overall receiving chops that his uncle had because his stats don't indicate that. But the interesting part about this is a Twitter account called Trench Gems called Keelan Need. 6'6", 250-pound tight end is ranked among the top 50 highest graded run blocking tight ends in Division I, both at the FBS and FCS level. An all academic team honoree with 2 years of eligibility remaining. He offers size, skill, and discipline to any offense. He said projections are mid to high FBS when he entered the transfer portal this past winter. Now, BYU needs tight ends of different varieties. Obviously, they have a guy like Carson Ryan who figures to be more of that pass receiving tight end. They hope that Ethan Erickson can stay healthy this year and also add his receiving chops. Well, it's always good to have a guy who's willing to block, and apparently that's what Keelan Need can do. But I also believe, knowing what I know of Jason Eck as an offensive-minded coach, if Keelan Need is running with the first team offense in Mexico, that means maybe he's worked on his hands and maybe a little bit more of a polished player than we're all being led to believe. And maybe he picks BYU, maybe he doesn't, but keep an eye on Keelan Need. The other player to keep an eye on is Terrence Marion. He is from Vancouver, Washington. Listed as an athlete, according to 24/7 Sports, playing for Evergreen High School up there in the state of Washington. He's an 88 rated prospect, according to 24/7 Sports. That's kind of knocking on the door of 4-star territory. Committed to Washington way back in June of last year. So why is BYU offering this kid? Well, I think Kalani Sitake wants to make sure that he has an option if he decides to renege maybe on his offer from the Washington Huskies. Now, I have not seen any intel out there kind of scouring the internet that Marion is a flight risk in terms of reneging on his commitment to Washington. But at 5'10", 160 pounds of the production he showed at the high school level, I think this past year, 51 passes, 51 receptions, 1,055 yards, and 10 touchdowns over 10 games. That's some pretty nice production. We talked also already about the commitment of Legend Glasgow. Well, it's a similar type production, 100-plus yards, a touchdown per game over 10 games. That's something you can work with. And BYU likes wide receivers who are of all sizes. They have guys like JoJo Phillips who are pushing nearly 6'6". You also have guys like Parker Kingston who are, I think Parker's almost 6 foot, but in this case, Terrence is listed at 5'10", $160. He figures the slot in as a slot receiver. Now, he is listed as an athlete officially. The hard commit for Washington came last November. He got his offer from them and visited them last June, but he has the commitment in November. I apologize for screwing that up. But the thing is, he's been committed for quite some time. Does BYU know something that other people don't? Is that why Kalani Sitake issued this offer to Terrence Marion? And to keep an eye on, and the production is there. The skills are there. I saw his huddle highlights, and yeah, I can see why BYU is interested, and we'll see if he decides to pull back from that commitment to the Huskies. And if he does, hey, BYU may find themselves in the mix there. All right, before we go on today's show, I also wanted to get to a couple of you have requested this. We had it on our Locked On our Insiders group Q&A last week, asking me for more updates on other BYU sports out there. So it was a big weekend for BYU and other sports. I got three of them I want to shout out real quick. First, BYU softball. Gordon Eakin's squad, and in the interest of full disclosure, my wife is a former BYU softball player, so I do keep a keen eye on the softball team because of that connection. They had a huge weekend, sweeping the Utah Utes and very much keeping themselves on the periphery of potentially going to the NCAA tournament. Their RPI is still kind of hovering right on the edge of where you need to be if you want to make it as an at-large team in the NCAA tournament. But Drake Toll talked about us on Locked On Big 12. BYU softball had two major comeback wins Thursday and Friday. The one on Friday, down 9-1. That was 9-1. It was like 8-1 in the seventh inning, and then just start going to town. 9 unanswered runs, walk it off with a 3-run jack out of Gail Miller Field. BYU softball, they used the long ball to great effect, and they crushed the Utes on Saturday in the rubber match, or to complete the sweep of that series, and very much kept themselves alive. So congratulations to Gordon Eakin and his squad. They're trending towards returning to the NCAA tournament for the first time in 3 seasons, if I recall correctly. This is a program that before the recent drought had made 16 straight NCAA tournaments. So they're accustomed to making the postseason, and to not make it the past couple of seasons have been tough on them. Also, shout out to men's volleyball. They are the 3 seed. They're ranked number 7 in the country. They're the 3 seed in the MPSF tournament this week in Malibu, California. Yeah, that doesn't suck to go down to Malibu and play at the Firestone Fieldhouse on the campus of Pepperdine. The 7th-ranked Cougars will face the winner of Stanford and Menlo. Now, if BYU wants to make the NCAA tournament, have a chance to win a national title, they likely need to win the MPSF tournament outright to get the automatic bid. But they're a 3 seed, and we'll see how they do. But got to take care of business against either Menlo or Stanford. And doesn't Stanford and Menlo sound like the most nerdy matchup in volleyball history? Like Menlo Park, obviously it's not the same. I don't think it's the same name for the Thomas Edison Company. Remember, Menlo Park is where it was headquartered out there in New Jersey. But Menlo and Stanford, that sounds pretty dorkish. And I don't mean any offense by that. I'm a dork in my own right. And to think of Stanford and Menlo, that made me chuckle. Now, final note. Congratulations are in order to 3 former BYU cross-country and track and field stars who finished in the top 10 of the Boston Marathon yesterday. Boston Marathon is considered by many to be the toughest marathon in the entire world, the toughest course to run on. Well, Connor Mantz finished 4th place, the highest American finish since 2017. His career best finish and career best time in the marathon. Rory Linkletter finished 6th, and Clayton Young finished 7th. That is elite territory to have 3 former Cougars competing at an elite international stage in the marathon. Awesome. Congratulations are in order to all 3 of them. Is BYU more and more a cross-country school? I dare say we are, but the thing is, it's cool to see them doing that. I also want to give a personal shout out to a few friends of mine who ran in the Boston Marathon as well. All of them have connections to my time at BYU. The first one is Sean Woodland, who is a pretty accomplished runner in his own right. He ran his 6th Boston Marathon yesterday, so congratulations, Sean. Hope you're doing well out there. A good friend of mine, Melanie, as she calls herself, Mele, when she runs, Melanie Miles, ran her first Boston Marathon yesterday. And then also a high school Mission and BYU connection, and David Dalma also ran in the Boston Marathon. So Mel, Sean, David, shout out to you guys. You are living your dream. I don't aspire to ever run a marathon. I am not built for that. Just my body frame. I'm a football player. I am not a distance runner. But I love the fact that I've got a personal connection to 3 people I know that ran on that famed course, and really, really cool stuff to watch them live their dreams, even if it's not my dream. All right. That's going to do it for today's show. Congratulations in order to all 6 of those runners. And there's thousands more. There's a lot of other BYU connections, a lot of Utah connections to the Boston Marathon. But those are the 3 I wanted to shout out on today's show. So once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there wherever you might be in Cougar Nation. As always, please continue to subscribe, rate, review, share this with your family and friends. Let them know this is a daily podcast with unique BYU conversation, insight, and intel you will not find anywhere else. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And once again, thank you for being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.